Hello everyone, so welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be reviewing a foundation. I've had this foundation for quite some time, so I feel like I'm in a good place right now to really give you a really good review on this foundation and also show you how it applies. So the foundation I'm going to be reviewing for you today is the L'Oreal Infallible Pro Matte. This has been out for quite some time now. It's not like something super new, but it is fairly new to me, and I figured why not give it a try. So when I saw this on display, I just didn't even think much of it, honestly, because a lot of foundations, especially from the drugstore, I don't think can really deliver on the keeping you matte for X amount of time claims. I don't really feel like I've found anything in the drugstore that can give me that. So I looked past it. I stopped and looked at the shades a couple times, put it out of my mind, and then I thought, you know what, let me just go and try this out, because it was in the back of my mind to kind of give this a shot, because you never know. I have used foundations from L'Oreal. I actually have the True Match foundation, and I have it in the shade W2 Light Ivory, which is just a little too light for me now that I've gotten a little bit of color recently. But if you compare the sort of like finishes, this one is definitely a buildable finish. It's, I would say, light to medium. You can make it full by adding a couple layers to this foundation. This is very, very liquidy. If you've ever used this product, you know it's like water runny. This is very, very thick. So I have two different shades. I have the 103, which is Natural Buff, and the 101 Classic Ivory. Now I do mix the Classic Ivory with the 103 on occasion. I didn't today for the demo. I just used just one shade, but the shade range is not that great. So I'm gonna be honest with you. It's very hard to get a match anyways in the drugstore because there's no testers. Okay, got it. But then the shade range is very limited. There's only a little bit. So hopefully with time, and that they might increase some more other, you know, ranges and make more colors, because I feel like what they've got, it's not going to fit a lot of people, because you will have to mix if you can't find your shade. So I decided to go with 103, and when I got it, I thought it was really good indoors, and right now it looks like it's a great shade, and it is because I've gotten some sun. But had I not had a little bit of sun, this is just a hair too light, but it's not to the point where it's noticeable. I see it because I'm very critical and I'm all up in the mirror, and I obviously, you know, you're gonna be really critical about how you look because it's you know, versus some other people, they may not even notice these things, but I do. And I felt like, okay, well, what if I try something lighter? And I thought, okay, the other shades seem really pink. The light shades to me look pink, and so I figured, okay, let me go with the lighter shade and just add a little bit. So I got the 101 Classic Ivory. Now Classic Ivory is very pink. It's for those porcelain skin tones, ultra fair skin tones, because this sucker makes me look like a ghost. I'm already pale to begin with, so this is definitely super light. This has a little bit of an orangey, slightly orangey vibe to it, but it's not to the point where it makes me look like an Oompa Loompa. I think that when you find the right shade, it can work for you, given a couple other things that I will talk about in a moment. But when I mix the two of them together, I get my perfect shade. Right now, because I've gotten some sun, the 103 works perfect for me. And so this foundation claims to be a 24-hour wear. Now, I don't ever let myself go by the hour claim on a foundation, because honestly, I don't wear my foundations for 24 hours, 16 hours, 18 hours, whatever it is. I don't ever wear my foundations for that long. I don't think that this will last 24 hours, maybe if you touch up multiple times, but I feel like after a certain amount of hours, it does start to break down. So I don't think that claim is true. It is a demi matte, which I think is a beautiful finish. It's very satiny looking. It's matte, but it's not completely flat where your face looks like there's no dimension to it. Of course, it's going to even everything out because it's a foundation. That's what it's supposed to do. But the finish of it is really nice and really soft. It doesn't feel tacky. It doesn't feel heavy, which is great. And it says it's a medium coverage. Now, I would say medium to slightly full, depending on if you have scarring, if you have acne, if you have dark spots, age spots, depending on what you have going on. It can be anywhere between a medium to full. For me, it looks like a full coverage because I don't have a lot of things to cover. Minor redness here and there, a couple little marks from previous breakouts years past that they're still kind of hanging out, some scars, but it's not to the point where I need to pile this on and get that really intense, like, full coverage. I don't really need. So on me, it's going to look full coverage, but if you have uneven skin tone, or if you have like blemishes or marks, you may have to apply some concealer over it. Why? Because I don't think this foundation really works well when you layer it so many times. I would say one even layer is good. Now you can go back and touch up quickly where you need it, because this foundation does set really quickly, and it's one of those things that I work in sections, and you will see that in the demo because you have to. By the time you put your dots on and you start blending one side, all of this is already set. And good luck blending that out, because it's a pain in you know what to blend out once it's set. So work in sections and build it in sections if you need to, because if you go one layer and then let it sit and come back, it doesn't really look that great. It starts to look really thick, heavy, it starts to kind of cling to certain areas of the face, and I don't like that. So I would say one decent layer is what you're gonna need, and that's it. And the texture on the back, it says Airlight. All this is written on the back, by the way. The texture says Airlight. I do think it's very light, but it's also very thick. As I compared it to the True Match, this is like water. This is very thick stuff. So because it is thick, I do recommend that you wear a primer, whether it's a smoothing primer, a hydrating primer, something, because if you have any sort of dry patches anywhere, this will cling and there's nothing you can do about it. You would have to like blend it out, which I've done that. I've had to take moisturizer and really massage it into that spot because it will cling, and the more I blend it, the worse it gets. So that's the downside between this for this foundation, because it does cling to every little crack, crevice, patch, anything that you've got. So I use a primer. I have the Korres Mattifying Primer, which I used today. This does help blend it in a little bit more smoothly. But if I were to use my little sample of the Makeup Forever Mattifying Primer, I feel like this is so thick, this primer. It works wonderful for mattifying, but this thick primer with this over the top, it's like, I can't even get this to really blend very well. Now, I do like this primer from Makeup Forever because it does keep me matte. However, with this foundation, I feel like if you don't really blend in your primer really well, especially something so thick like this Makeup Forever one, I feel like if you go over it and you don't really blend in the primer, it will show a bit of a darker like patch or maybe like a ring, where maybe some of your really thick primer didn't get blended in well. I don't really have that problem with this one because this Michael Kors one is more of like a, it has that sort of moisturizer texture where it blends really evenly and smoothly into the skin. The only problem I have is the Makeup Forever because this mattifying primer is very, very thick. So those are the two primers that I have. I don't really have anything else in my collection that I would use. I have tried using the Too Faced Primed and Poreless Pure. This is the oil-free one. It's actually made for sensitive skin, and it's not supposed to break you out. This primer, I don't know what it is about this primer, but it makes me greasier than I don't know what. I put this on under anything, and within half an hour, I look like I put face oil on. That's how greasy this makes me look. So these two together, for me, because I have oily skin, they don't work at all. It's like, stay away. I don't really have anything else that I use as far as primer. I usually just use this Korres one, and that works for me. I do like the Makeup Forever, but again, if you use this and you're oily and you're going to use this foundation, just make sure you really blend this in. Make sure that your skin underneath is really well moisturized, regardless of what primer you use, because if, like I said, if you have any sort of dryness, this will cling to it, just like any foundation would, but because this is really thick, it does cling. So let me just go ahead and put a blob of this onto the back of my hand so that you can see how this is. You can see there's a blob. It's not really running anywhere or anything like that as this True Match would or as other liquid foundations. So let me just kind of blend this in for you guys to see. This is the Classic Ivory, and then this is the Natural Buff. So you can see the Natural Buff is just a little bit too dark, but when I mix the two together, you know, I get a more of a lighter kind of skin tone color that actually works for me. But those are the two colors that I've got. As you can see, this one has that slight kind of orangey vibe, and then this is a little bit slightly pinky, but I can make it work because of the 103 being kind of orangey. Now, I would say, because I have oily skin, and I would say I have really oily skin, I've had this on for a few hours now, and I am starting to kind of get a little shiny. I do have some highlight on, so that definitely does affect the product as well, but I would say if I use a regular moisturizer, like my L'Oreal Youth Co Texture Perfector, or if I use my Clinique Moisture Surge or something like that, I will probably get about 4 hours of wear with this without getting any oil. Now, if I were to do my simple cleansing water, the micellar cleansing water, and let that dry and then go over it with this, I can get about 6 hours of a mattified look to the skin, which is the reason why I put up with this being so thick because I love the coverage, I love the finish, and I like how this actually does make me look matte. And I'm really surprised that something like this from the drugstore can give me that, because I've never even been able to find something from the department stores that have the claims of mattifying, oil-free, so on and so forth, actually work for my oily skin. So when I found out that this actually works, I was really, really pleased with it. So I really do enjoy it. I would say this is great for anyone that has oily skin. Combo, slightly oily. If you're dry, I would say stay away from it unless you were to mix this in with a moisturizer or even a beauty oil, some type of face oil, whether it's jojoba oil, vitamin E oil, whatever. You could probably get by with using this if you like the finish, the color, if you really want to use this foundation. Otherwise, if you're dry, I would say stay away, because this is not really ideal for dry skin. So combo, oily to oily, extra oily skin really could get some benefit out of this. So I do like it. I haven't had any issues with breaking out. I use prescribed acne medication, so I don't really normally break out. But I do like this, and you can get these at any drugstore. They're right around $12 depending on where you go, and I really do like this foundation. So I'm going to go ahead and insert the demo so that you can see how I apply this, and then I will meet you back.
Alright, so the first thing that I'm doing here is applying my primer. This is the Korres Mattifying Primer. It's the one that has the pomegranate. And I just apply that with my fingers all over, and I try to get it as smooth as possible because this foundation does tend to cling to a lot of things, especially dry patches. So just use any sort of primer. Then I'm going to take my Sigma brush and I'm going to spray it down to dampen it so that it blends in the foundation a little bit better. And today I'm just going to use the shade number 103, which is called Natural Buff. And as you can see, it's a little bit kind of orangey, but it's not bad, and it matches me now because I've gotten a little sun. So with this foundation, the key is to work in sections. As you see here, I'm starting on one side of my face, buffing it in and getting it to where it's just right before I move on to another section. Why? Because this sets really, really quickly, and you want to prevent that. So again, sections, and you should be okay if you are working in the same way I'm doing it. You can start in other parts of your face, obviously, but I think it's best to do in sections because I've tried doing the dotting all over my face. By the time I get to it, it's already blended and it just doesn't work. So I use this brush, dampen, and I think it works wonderful to get it really well blended into my face. And if I do need to go back and touch up, as you can see, I don't know if you can notice if the camera picks up, but I do have a little bit of a red spot above one of my brows, and I go in with my finger and I just kind of tap a little bit and then buff it in really quickly. That's okay, but if you have a lot of spots to cover or uneven patches or anything like that, I would recommend using a concealer instead of more foundation. And then I'm re-dampening my brush, and then I'm going over everything that I've just done to make sure that everything is really well blended. And this sometimes helps sort of blend in any sort of areas, especially like around my nose, that I may have forgotten to blend really well, and you can see some foundation sort of like caked on. I hate to use that word, but it's true. If I have any sort of residue, then it'll just sort of blend that in. And that's pretty much all I do to apply this foundation.
Now, if I were to set this with a powder, I would set it with a translucent setting powder, like the one that from e.l.f., the high definition setting powder, comes in a little cube like this. I can also use like the Bare Minerals Mineral Veil, something translucent. If I do use a colored powder to set this, I normally go with my Maybelline Dream Wonder powder, because this powder is so microfine. It's so silky and smooth. It's so wonderful at setting your foundation because it adds a slight hint of a color, but it's not really that pigmented, and it's a really great foundation for really setting it. I don't touch up this foundation with a powder because, again, a powder over something really thick, it just doesn't look right. I use the Evercolor Powerless Face Defender, which I will link down below. It's a kind of solid gel, weird product that I've talked about before in favorites and in other videos. That's the product that I use to touch up anywhere between the 4 to 6 hour mark is when I touch that up, and I will only touch up once because, again, usually by 7 to 8 hours I'm already taking it off, so I don't keep my makeup on for a really long time. Now, I have used this Bare Minerals Ready Foundation to set it very, very lightly because this powder is very, very thick. But as you can see, it's super yellow. And so when I started using this a while ago, and before I bought the Classic Ivory, I was using a little bit of this yellow powder to kind of counteract it because you can probably see that this is much lighter, and it definitely made it work until I bought this one to mix with it. So I wouldn't really use anything super heavy because I just don't feel like that works, and I use a big fluffy brush like this to set it. This is the Real Techniques multitask brush. I've had this for years. It's one of my very favorite brushes of all time and one of my very favorites from the Real Technique line. It's wonderful, it's soft, it packs on a nice bit of product if you need it to, but also is very light to kind of give you a light dusting. So it's a good foundation. I would recommend it for oily skin types. Be careful with what you use to set it. If you use a powder, use something more translucent, something very thin and lightweight, and you would be okay. You may be wondering about using a sponge. I have used it with the Real Technique sponge, and it's not my favorite. Maybe because the foundation is a little bit thick. I don't know, maybe this was a little too damp. I have no idea, but I did get myself another one because I love this sponge. This is great to apply foundation, but I just don't like it with this Infallible Pro Mask. So I hope this review was helpful. I know it was long, but I definitely wanted to cover all my bases here and kind of give you a really good look at how I applied it and what works and what doesn't work. So I hope that you enjoyed it and found this helpful. If you have any additional questions that I didn't cover in this video, please leave them in the comment section. Don't forget to subscribe, thumbs up, like the video, and if you have a comment, leave it down below. I would love to hear from you. Have a fabulous day, and don't forget to follow me on Twitter and Instagram. It's @GlamourByLexi. I'll have it on the bottom of the screen as always. Have a fabulous day, and I will see you guys very, very soon. Bye.